This is the weekly recap where we go through what happened in the past week of college baseball. Starting with the biggest news, surprise to many, Tennessee dropping a series at Kentucky. This is their first series loss of the year, and it's to an okay Kentucky team. Nothing that crazy that stands out with their team, but Tennessee just couldn't get it done.
Yeah, and this follows right after we had just discussed if this team really has the make and the mentality to win the College World Series. Not what you like to see in on a rainy weekend on the road. You'd like to see them have a little adversity, and this weekend it's the offense is the story for me. They just couldn't get any timely hits in those first two games. 5 hits in both the Friday and Saturday games each, and on Friday they had 12 walks and still only managed to score 2 runs. Not sure how you only score 2 runs with 12 free bags on the game. 16 runners left on base that day. You got to score more runs, especially with that talented of a roster. And the same story goes on Saturday when they score 2 runs again. You just got to score more runs with that talented of a roster. The pitching staff pitched pretty well, only giving up 10 runs or 10 runs on the weekend, I believe. So pretty good performance. The offense just couldn't get it clicking.
Yeah, it just seemed like from my perspective that Tennessee just didn't really look like they wanted to win the series, especially in the rain when it was pouring. They just they weren't yelling and screaming like they usually do, and it kind of showed to me that they can't just rely on their talent alone to win them games.
Yeah, and this starts to bring out the questions. Do you give them a mulligan? Is it just a rainy weekend on the road? Do you just give them a free pass? Or is it a team that was steaming hot and is now running out of gas? Right now, we kept them at the number one spot. We're siding with the mulligan, given their dominance throughout this year, but they're certainly going to have to rebound against Georgia at home this upcoming weekend, and we'll be talking about that more later.
Right. They still have the resume of a number one team. I think that they've just consistently put that up, but other teams are starting to creep a little bit closer. So Tennessee has to once again prove that they are the number one team that they've been there for so long. But another SEC series this past weekend with a big series win for Vandy against Georgia at Georgia. Number 24 Vandy, number 19 Georgia. So this was a probably or what we thought was going to be a closely contested battle, and it went Vanderbilt's way for once. They were able to get a good solid series win, and now with Florida getting a bit hotter, that series is looking a bit better, and Vandy is now in a position to be in the mix for hosting a regional, if not a top 8 seed. So suddenly they're in that conversation once again.
Yeah, this is a Vandy team that's had a high RPI this entire year, but just didn't have quality series wins on their resume. This is the first big one here, finally solidifying that they can win against those competitive teams. And you mentioned Florida. Florida was swept by Arkansas and then lost the series at Vandy. But since then, Florida's won 5 of their last 6 conference games, and they close out the year with Missouri and South Carolina, both very winnable series and very sweepable series that could close it out on a 6-0 run there. Yeah, it's making that Vandy series win look even better. And then on the other hand, for Georgia, it's not looking good. I mean, they were playing well. You lose this series. It was a close series you would have liked to win. Why it's not looking good is they follow it up on the road at Tennessee, who you might say looks vulnerable, although they lost Kentucky, but they're probably going to be back looking for blood. I don't think it's the spot you want to be facing Tennessee in.
Yeah, especially at Tennessee. It's a very dangerous position for Georgia to be in and potentially kicks them out of the top 25 in the future. But again, staying in the SEC for another top tier matchup this past weekend was number 4 Arkansas at number 15 Auburn. Again, with the road team taking the series, all the games were pretty close, but Arkansas was able to edge it out and have a great series win against a pretty hot Auburn team.
Yeah, Arkansas just seems to consistently do just enough to win these competitive series against good teams. The offensive inconsistencies showed up again for Arkansas this weekend when they only got 3 hits on Saturday. And we've said it the whole year, extremely talented team. And obviously they've played well since they're ranked fourth in the country, top five in just about every single poll. But we've been waiting for the offense to click this entire season. They did have 2 pretty impressive games, but it doesn't seem like they've been able to put together a full series of that offense hitting well. And it's concerning a little since you only have 2 weeks left until postseason play. You'd like to see them click in and be a little more consistent with that offense going into the postseason.
Yeah, it is surprising that they're able to win this many games with the offense still not really figuring it out. I mean, they have very, very similar players to what they had last year in their crazy dynamic offense, but it's just not working itself out right now. And somehow they're pulling together great series wins, but to compete with the Tennessees, the Oregon States, it seems like you'd have to take that next step up. But we'll have to see what happens if Arkansas can really get that offense churning come postseason.
Yeah, I mean, if your floor is winning 2 out of 3 games every weekend, you're obviously in a good spot. That's why they're ranked fourth in the country. You just know they have the roster to be able to sweep some of these series, and we'd like to see that from them moving forward.
Definitely. And now we can go to the Pac 12, where it was a weekend full of sweeps with all but one conference series ending in a sweep. That being all the series, UCLA, number 11 UCLA at University of Washington. Washington being able to sweep UCLA, absolutely brutal. Now puts UCLA at 63 in the RPI spot, which is not great for a team that doesn't seem to have a crazy good offense. It seems like they rely a lot on their pitching staff, which can win you weekends, but if it's not fully there on the pitching staff, you know it's going to be a rough time.
Yeah, I mean, UCLA is a team creeping in the top 10 in most polls. And like you said, they're down to 63 in the RPI. That typically doesn't get you in, but they do have a good conference record in the Pac 12 right now. But I'd say they really need to step on the gas these past 2 weeks. And it doesn't necessarily get any easier because their final series of the year is on the road at Oregon State. Not a great spot you want to be if you have to rack up some wins before the season closes. So they're going to want to take care of business this weekend before then.
Definitely. And speaking of Oregon State, they had a tremendous weekend and closed the gap to a very, very, very fine margin to Tennessee after going 4-0 against Oregon throughout the week. And they just look like the class of the Pac-12 now and have a 3-game gap to the rest of the field.
Yeah, they just dominate once again. They swept the season series over Oregon 5 games to 0. Yeah, just look dominant. Jerpy dominant once again. They look like a complete team. The pitching staff keeps holding teams to little to no runs, and their offense does enough every single game. And yeah, just crazy stuff from them. And like you said, closing the gap on Tennessee for sure.
Yeah, Jerpy looks like the lock for Pac-12 Pitcher of the Year, and I'd say has a very, very good chance to win the National Pitcher of the Year award. But staying in the Pac-12 again for another sweep, Cal at number 10 Stanford, and Stanford does their job. A great bounce back week for them to sweep Cal, and they don't drop back from Oregon State in the conference rankings, but still they're 3 games that they need to pick up, and they've already played each other, so it's going to be tough to make up that ground.
Yeah, this was just a good series sweep for them, considering they lost last weekend on the road at Washington. Good to see them bounce back, have some resiliency, and Alex Williams continues to dominate on those Friday games. He's the only guy giving Jerpy any sort of run for his money in the Pac-12 Pitcher of the Year race. Alex Williams now has below a 2 ERA. Ultra impressive stuff from him, and it's good to see Stanford getting hot down the stretch here before the postseason comes.
Yeah, and the last Pac-12 series that ended in a sweep was Utah at Arizona State. We don't really need to touch on this much. Both these teams are pretty much out of the conversation of making the tournament unless they win the Pac-12 tournament and get their bid through there.
Yeah, we thought Utah might have had outsider's chance with a decent overall record, and they were sitting around 500 in Pac-12 play. Especially if they would have swept this weekend against an Arizona State squad who hasn't looked very well during Pac-12 play, but the reverse happens. They actually get swept by Arizona State, and their chances certainly fall through the floor, and it's not looking good anymore.
Yeah, and another team that had a bad weekend was Southern Miss, who faced ODU. It was at home for Southern Miss, and now it is back-to-back weekend series losses for them. They're still in a pretty good spot to host somehow, but that can all change if they struggle against UTSA this next weekend. And it's not a good trend for Southern Miss that was looking like the class of the mid-majors and now is struggling and almost out of the top 25.
Yeah, last weekend against UAB, it was the pitching staff that really costed them the series, giving up 19 runs. But this weekend, they bounced back, giving up 12 runs. Still not at their team expectations, considering they have a team ERA of 3. But this weekend, it was really the lack of offense that costed them. They give up 4 runs each game, only able to win the Sunday game. And like you mentioned, still hanging on to a regional hosting spot at this point, but they've definitely fallen out of the national seed conversation for now. And coming up, they face UTSA, who's on the outside looking in for a bid, and not a easy opponent you want to be facing coming off 2 series losses.
Yeah, definitely. UTSA is a team that wants to prove that they should be in the tournament, and Southern Miss needs to step up their game to be able to compete with that. But another series that we want to review is Georgia Tech at Clemson. Right as it seems like Clemson's season is over and you can write that in the books, they keep it alive by sweeping Georgia Tech. And for me, I'd say this is right now my deep sleeper to make Omaha. This Clemson team, you never know what you're getting out of them, and if they can continue to stay hot or at least keep some of that power alive, I mean, they can go far if they can make it into the tournament.
Yeah, they were a talented team coming into the year, just hadn't played well. They've had a tough schedule in ACC play also. But yeah, the ACC continues just to be a sweep fest for home teams. Clemson goes from 6-14 in conference play up to 9-14 after this sweep. Got an outsider's chance at making the tourney, like you said, and they're hot. So we'll see what they're able to do these last 2 weeks. Maybe they win one against Virginia, sweep Boston College. Possibly they're in the tourney. They're certainly trending the right way, and I think the committee will look at that. And then Georgia Tech, on the other hand, they were back in the top 25 in some polls, looking like a potential host site, and then it all just falls through. They've been an inconsistent team all year, so it's not necessarily surprising that this happened, but at the same time it is. Right as they were getting hot. Yeah, just crazy how the ACC keeps turning things around like this.
The consistency that Georgia Tech has not shown is pretty ridiculous after beating Miami and then getting swept like that to Clemson. But, Clemson, they really have shown so many different sides to themselves where if they can win these the last 2 series or take 4 out of the last 6, something like that, like you said, they definitely could be a scary team in the postseason. And they're a team that throughout the year, even though their ACC conference record has been awful, their RPI has stayed like around that 25 spot pretty much the entire year, which is ridiculous. They just were able to get a bunch of wins in non-conference and kind of ride through that. But yeah, their RPI shows that they should probably be a regional team. It's just a matter of if their conference record can match that at this point.
Yeah, usually hard to get in with a sub 500 record in conference play, and how we said if they take 4 out of the last 6, they'd be 13-16 in conference play. But like you said, with that high RPI, it's hard to deny teams in that top 25 in the RPI. So it's likely they would get a shot even with that underwhelming conference record.
Definitely. The last series that I want to touch on is the Maryland at Rutgers series. huge series between the two teams, the top teams in the Big Ten, and it just kept getting delayed throughout the weekend. Ended up their last game being played on Monday. So we just saw that finish up. Maryland winning the series, which is huge for them and puts them in a spot to potentially host, while Rutgers probably on the outside looking in at least that category.
Yeah, just a messy weekend with rain. Like you said, 2 games being played on Sunday and the last game being played on Monday. But overall, just good series win for Maryland, continuing to climb up and looking to solidify themselves as a hosting spot, like you said.
Yep, definitely. Thank you for watching and listening. If you enjoyed, we would really appreciate a like and subscribe for more weekly college baseball content.